Welcome back to my channel. Hi, I'm Ada, and in this video we'll be discussing in detail the bustier top of my Asoebi outfit inspired by the Leo zodiac sign. We'll be discussing the materials I used, the pattern drafting changes I made, where I got the tutorials from, and some sewing tips from me to you if you want to recreate this top. If you're interested, keep on watching. I'll just be mentioning briefly what I used, and for my Ankara I used this red and gold Ankara fabric for the entirety of my top. Then I lined it with a black lining, and I also used this organza fabric for the yoke of my top. I used paper stay to line my lining and also used hair stay for my Ankara fabric just to give it structure. I also used paper stay to give my sleeve structure as well, and I used the medium size wadding to pad my bustier top. Then I also used bias tape and boning to give my top structure. We also used the matching thread and of course my pattern piece. Now that we have our materials, let's get started. Though I knew how to draft a bustier, I went onto the internet to tell me more on how to just perfect the shape, but as simple as it is, it's actually quite tricky. However, I combined the tutorial I got from Star Bareme and also another YouTuber that gave me the desired shape that I wanted. I usually say that when you want to make a particular style, it is usually best you sew that style for yourself to perfect it. If you're sewing for yourself, make a mock-up first. Making a mock-up will help you notice your mistakes and adjust your pattern appropriately. One thing I noticed the hard way is that the measurement you use while wearing a bra will be different from the measurement you use when drafting a bustier or a corset, because in those points you will not be wearing a bra. So if you notice that it's not fitting correctly, I would recommend that you change your measurements that you use while drafting. In my case, I noticed this by the third time I was drafting a pattern, and my mind just told me to, just change the measurement. And when I did, it fit me perfectly. So what I did was I increased my bust point measurement to 11 inches, my under bust to 15 inches, and my top length to 18 inches. The only measurements that remained the same were my round measurement and my neck measurement, which was 3 by 3 at the front and 3 by 1 inch at the back. The next change that I made was my nipple to nipple measurement. Even though I just noticed that my nipple to nipple measurement, or the center front of my bustier, was looking odd, and increasing that to 4.5 really made it all balance out. So if you're on the bigger side, consider using a nipple to nipple measurement of 4.5. Trust me, it will look way better. Another issue I had was my dart measurement. I tried taking out 1 inch on both sides for my darts, and it gave me excess boob or excess bust material. So what I did was to take out half an inch towards the center front and 1.5 inch towards the sides. And when I did that, it really balanced it out and made the curve on the side of my bust instead of on the center front. I don't know how to explain this, but this was the best way that I could get a cup on my top that fits my bust, if you get what I mean. This totaled to 2 inches of dart allowance at my under bust. And also note that whatever amount you take from your under bust is the same amount of dart you would take out from your above bust or upper chest, if you will. Now, another tip I would say is to draw your bust circle With your bust circle, you'll be able to drop that perfect sweetheart neckline, and that bust circle will also help you know where and how to take out your dart of your upper bust. Just as you can see, from that midpoint of my shoulder line to my bust point, I'm removing my 1/2 inch dart towards the center front and 1.5 inch dart towards the side. Having this bust circle, to get your bust circle is your bust point length minus your under bust length, and depending on your cup size, for a D cup it is 4 inches, for C cup to B cup it is 3 inches, and so on and so forth. The chart is online. And also from the bust circle, I could be able to trace out where I wanted my yoke to stop, which is 1 inch from my chest line. The only thing left is to just replace your horizontal measurement and then trace out your pattern. I'm going to link down below the 2 tutorials I followed that, and they explained in depth what to do and where to take what. So, and just look at how this looks. It fits so nice on me, and I saw online that if your bustier fits perfectly without you zipping the back, it just shows that you did a good job, and that was what I got. Speaking of padding a bustier or a princess seam, what I just did was put 2 ovals at the sides of my pattern, just as you can see, and also cover the front wholly, just as you can see. It's just that you leave 1/2 inch sewing allowance at every point that you are going to be joining that piece to another fabric. If you are going to be stoning your fabric, I would advise you stone your front piece right after you join them together, because when it comes to stoning, you need a flat surface to place your iron when you've already arranged your stones on it. For the back, however, you don't need to do that, because since the back doesn't have any cup or bust area, you can just attach all your yoke, the back, the lining together, and then proceed to stone it at your ironing table, because since the back is flat, you don't need anything. And then you attach your zipper immediately, because it will be way easy when the back is separated. Just look at the reflections of the table. The camera was not picking the stone, I don't know why, and it was very painful. Now that everything is done, the stone is attached, the next thing we need to do is attach the yoke. If you see in my corner sewing corners 101 video, it is the exact same principle. You are sewing 2 inverted curves. So the first thing you need to do is place it upside down. You make your notch on the inverted curve, and then you place it upside down, being conscious of the 1 inch sewing allowance you have given each curve, and you go slow and steady from the center to the side, one at a time. Do not rush yourself. Go as slow and steady as you can, and you arrange the pieces as you sew along also the 1/2 inch allowance that you gave each curve. Don't try and rush and then make a mistake you sew less than or more than. You made the right decision while you cut. Follow your instincts. Once you finish one side of the curve, you pause, you inspect, just like I did, and I found that okay, I'm doing well, I'm doing all right. Then I fold it back again and go onto the other side. You are starting again from the middle to the side. You see, the fabric is not glass. Adjust it as you can, I beg. The fabric is not glass. Adjust it to how you see fit that you'll be able to sew. You position it correctly from the side and you sew on the other curve. Like I said earlier, take note that you added 1/2 inch allowance and sew along that 1/2 inch allowance that you have allocated to join that particular curve. Once I was done with sewing that, I inspected. You are sewing something, you inspect. Is it sitting right? Is it not sitting right? If it's not sitting right, you can undo the stitch and do it again. If you find that some parts are not properly sewn together, just like I noticed on the side right here, you ascertain that okay, whether I've taken less allowance like I did. I took in less than half inch allowance as I was sewing at the sides. So I just went back in and I sewed in the appropriate amount of allowance I gave to the side. You just don't be afraid to go back over and over again to be sure that the appropriate amount of allowance you give has been sewn in. So that's one thing I would give again as a sewing tip. If you are sewing anything at all or any fabric and you notice that you have an excess, go in and ensure that you have taken in the appropriate amount of allowance you allocated to joining that piece together. That's why you need to measure and remeasure. Ensure that you are taking the exact amount of allowance you gave it. If you took in too much, you will have it fitting less or be too small. If you took in too less, you find out that piece would be too big for the person that you're sewing for or even yourself. So don't be shy and recheck your measurements while you are sewing at every step, so that it will not be as if after you finish joining everything you now measure, it will not be too big or too small. Just that minor rechecking is actually going to save you a whole lot of stress at the end of the day. Now my front bodice is perfected. The next thing to do is to attach my lining, and you need to attach your lining in a way that once you flip it over, it's going to cover that sewing seam, and this is how you do it. Of course, the first thing I'm doing is making a notch, and this part is actually easier because you are sewing similar curves together instead of inverted curves together. However, what I did was that I left the middle part out because I was already tired and I didn't want to stress myself. So what I did, I left the middle part still open. I sewed in the main curves together, and I went in at the end to hand stitch the middle point again. Like I said in my previous video, you can never do away with hand stitching. It will be there with you for life. Just because you bought $1 million machine doesn't mean you won't hand stitch at a point. And there's no shame in it. If you can't get through that place with your machine, the next thing you do is calm down, thread some needle, and you go on hand stitching. And as you can see, everything is set, everything is ready to go. I went out there and pressed my seams flat, and we move on to the next tip. If I would give any tip for sleeves, I would say that sleeve that you are envying online, they used a lot of yardage to get that poofiness. And since I am going to use 1 inch elastic, I'm encasing 1 inch to pass my elastic. And since my sleeve is going to be puffed, I would advise that you attach your sleeves first before you sew in the sides. Just like I'm doing, I am going to pin my sleeves all around my armhole, and having a flat surface really helps me do that easily. If I have attached the sides by now, I would really have a lot of difficulty. And of course, baste. You have to baste them together. 1, to be sure if the poofiness or the puff is at the right place, and 2, so that you can easily sew it or make adjustments when you're ready. Then the final thing I did was to attach the band of my top, and once everything was done, totally everything, I then passed the elastic of my sleeve. Passing the elastic of my sleeve was the last thing I did. See, my top is done, the sides is attached, the sleeve is attached. Then the final thing I did was to run my elastic through my sleeves. Honestly, I wanted to leave it open like that because it was fine, but my sister just said that since I went for a puff look, I should just, commit until the end, which I did. And I loved the end result of my top. I was also tempted to stone the sleeves as well, but my mind just said I should be calm, and I enjoyed everything. At the end of the day, it turned out beautiful. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe, like the video, share, yada yada, all that stuff. and I'll be coming out with a detailed tutorial on my Zara cap in the next video. Bye.